The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield. It's a podcast about The Nanny, a hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. I am Sean DePasquale here with...
Tori Sheffield.
That's right. And this week, we're talking about season 6, episode 6. I'm pregnant. So, of course, in the sex-filled season, someone was bound to get pregnant or think they got pregnant, which is basically the premise of this episode. Maggie thinks her boyfriend got her pregnant.
And
Shame.
well, no, and as I wrote, is the episode where Maggie thinks she may be pregnant, and then there's a lot of very, very creepy fathering.
Oh my! Okay, dude. This was one of the episodes where Elizabeth was with me, so I just put it on and she was in the background and I'm taking notes. And there's a scene in this episode where something happens and Elizabeth went, "Ew, what is this?" And I was like, I don't know, dude. I don't know what's happening.
It's like maybe if you found your 14-year-old in bed, this would have been. Maybe I could see it happening, but
I mean, there's so much of this that's weird. All right, so
okay.
Well, let me just start by saying this one is written by Ivan Menschel, the little mensch, and directed by Peter Mark Jacobson.
Can I just quickly say, last week you said you called him Mark Peter Jacobson, and I didn't even catch it during the original.
Oh, did I? Oh,
yeah. But we know that's not right.
No, PMJ. I should know that. If it's any consolation to Mr. Jacobson, I am slightly dyslexic and also stupid. So,
and I can attest to it.
A deadly combination.
Okay. So yes. Written by Ivan Menschel, directed by Mr. Jacobson. Gosh, it's such I love this season. I'm loving the directing. I'm loving the content and the writing.
Same.
It's like a 10 out of 10 for me.
I think it's really interesting that we spent so much of this series leading up to this season having heard all of these negative things. The show goes off the rails. It's going to get all weird and crazy. And I got to tell you, now that we're here, I think I like this season 10 times better than I like season 4.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because that was the season where we were like, oh, it's kind of like the same thing every week. We're in this holding pattern. Well, this episode, it starts with Fran is leading Sylvia and Yetta up to her old bedroom, which is which is now like empty, right? Because she sleeps in the master bedroom with Maxwell, and she's explaining that she really wants to turn her old bedroom into a gym as like a surprise wedding present for Maxwell. And then see if Sylvia goes, "Good, keep him young and healthy. Men who marry the fine women tend to die young." And then Fran's like, "Why is that?" And then this might have been my favorite line of the whole episode, right in the first second. Yet she like shrugs and she goes, "Because they want to." The idea that like they'd rather die than be married to a fine woman. Like, it's a better out.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that. I thought that was a great line.
That was so good. And so anyway, they open the door to Fran's old bedroom, and Maggie is in bed with Michael, her new boyfriend. And, it's like one of those horrific moments where it's like they're caught and Fran is like...
So Maggie is how old? Have we established? She's like 21? She's under 20? What?
She says she's 21 in this scene. A few weeks ago, she said she was 20. And then I noticed someone in like the comments of one of the things online, and I thought this too, said she would actually probably be 19 based on how old she was when we started the series. So I think they maybe aged her up a little to like make this seem
slightly more appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah. Because she was like literally like, "I just turned 21. It's like, I thought you just turned 22 weeks ago. But either way, so she's So, Fran's like, "Oh my gosh, like, what were you thinking in this house?" And she's like, "Well, I'm just turned 21. I'm an adult now." And Fran is freaking out less because Maggie is sexually active and more because she knows that if Mr. Sheffield finds out, somehow the blame is going to get placed on her, and she knows that, how Maxwell might react.
And the age thing is so silly because it's like she's using it as a defense, like, hey, I'm 21 years old. But it's like, yes, but if you were a smart, mature 21-year-old, you wouldn't be doing this at your father's house when you literally are dating a guy who has a giant palatial apartment in the city. It makes no sense. Why would you risk this at all?
Well, I guess at that age, when the mood strikes,
but that's my point. That actually, and I don't know that that's even bad writing. I think it's a testament to, yes, you're physically 21, but you're not maybe mature enough to be doing this yet and having this kind of life yet, because you're still making very immature, silly decisions.
You could argue the inverse, which is Mr. Sheffield is completely in the wrong, because there should be a part of him that's like, she's an adult. This is something that adults do. And okay, if it happens under my roof, like, that's life, that is the reality of two young people dating. And I'm not
I agree. I think Maxwell comes off as incredibly puritanical, as always, in this episode. So I'm not really siding with Maxwell here. I'm just pointing out also a kind of a flaw in Maggie's thinking.
For her own sense of self-preservation, she shouldn't have been doing this, knowing the father that she has. But Mr. Sheffield ends up walking by because he hears the ruckus. He walks in, he sees them in bed. And it's funny because Yetta and Sylvia are also still there, and they both took a seat on the bed. Involved, just inserting themselves.
This is also creepy. Sylvia sits on the bed next to the boyfriend and goes like, "Hi," and I'm like, "Ew, they're naked." Sylvia, get off the bed.
But then Mr. Sheffield, he almost has a heart attack, and we go to the opening credits. We cut back to the bedroom. Now, Maggie's up. She's in a robe. Her boyfriend's there, wrapped in like a towel or a sheet, and Mr. Sheffield is just losing it on Maggie. He's like, what were you thinking? How could you have done this? And I was like, wow, this is a little much, because this would just be so traumatic for a daughter to have just been caught doing it with her boyfriend, literally naked under the robe, and her father is just yelling at her, but she's 21 years old. That's
and
the thing.
the whole family walked in on her.
Yes. I was just like, this is like the nightmare. This is the stuff you would tell therapists for years to come. And he ends up kicking Michael out, and he's like, Maggie, he's like, Margaret, explain yourself. And then Maggie's like, well, Fran said we could do whatever we do in our own apartment here, when we're here. And then when Maxwell now is like, oh, you did this because Fran told you could, he becomes even more incensed, to the point where he goes, Miss Fine, come with me. And then Fran looks at Maggie, and she's like, oh, now I'm back to Miss Fine. Great. Thanks a lot. We then cut to this sort of ongoing B plot line where Niles is calling.
This is a great bit.
It's a great bit. Yeah. He has seen an ad about a car in the paper, and he's calling the number, and he's like, is this the owner of the 1993 BMW? I'm very interested in buying. And then the person on the other end clearly says ooh, you've got a sexy voice, describe yourself. And then he's like, ooh, your voice is pretty sexy too, tell me, what do you look like? And as he leaves the room, Cece comes in, and we realize she's the other person on the end of the line. So they're both kind of talking sexy to each other without realizing who the person is. And they both are also describing themselves as way more attractive than they are, which is super funny. But as he walks out, Cece walks in, and then he kind of catches the tail end of what she's saying and realizes that she is in fact the woman on the other end of the phone, but she doesn't know he's the guy on the phone. So he definitely toys with her, because we see her go, you want me to do what? Well, okay, if it turns you on. And then she's like, I'm bought by the Sailor Man. And she starts singing the Popeye song in a cartoonish way. And then then he literally walks in and sings the last line with her while he's on the phone. And she realizes he completely pranked her. And as they walk out arguing, Fran and Maxwell walk into the office. And I thought that this exchange was actually pretty realistic, right? Fran's like, yeah, honey, you're just upset because you saw it in front of you. But you must have assumed that was happening. And I think this is also fair. He's assuming is totally different than actually knowing. Assuming means you could still be wrong. And then he's like, but this is where I was like, oh man, he's delusional. He goes, please talk to her and tell her she needs to stop. And I was like, stop having sex in their house or stop having sex altogether? Because again, delusional if he thinks that Fran can convince his 21-year-old to stop having sex with her boyfriend.
I know.
My God. But, Fran agrees, even though she thinks it's a lost cause, just like we do. And she even goes, sure thing. And meanwhile, you can take Opie over to Floyd's for a haircut. I went, wow, Andy Griffith reference.
What a reference.
Did you used to, so I used to watch Andy Griffith growing up, like when it would be on TV during the day, and I liked it. Like, I didn't know it was so completely dated. Like, did you ever watch it?
Andy Griffith? Mm-hmm. No, I'm not 70. I mean, I probably saw an episode or two on like Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, or like one of those channels. I feel like I know the theme song, right? It goes.
Okay. That's it. And who's the little boy who plays Opie?
The great Ron Howard. Mm-hmm. Ronald Steen Howardinsky was his Jewish name.
Well, when I was a kid, I would watch whatever was on TV during the day, and everyone let me. So I watched like the Andy Griffith Show, and I didn't really understand it was that dated. I mean, it's probably about as innocent as a cartoon, And then
I mean, it felt like I had seen episodes of Leave It to Beaver 2 as a kid, and again at the time, it didn't feel any more dated to me than old Brady Bunch or old Lucy episode. Like everything from that time just felt like a little dated, but not nearly as dated as it feels now.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
The idealized 50s and 60s weren't as far gone in like the 80s and 90s as they are now, where you look back and you're like, what was that?
Like truly the fact that I was watching a show where the line, and then you can take Opie to Floyd's for a haircut. Like, yeah, it just, so it was ancient. But again, very entertaining for a small child. And then anyway, but Fran is like calling him out on it. Like, okay, like I'll try, but like you're being very old fashioned. And then the next scene, we're back at the mansion, and Niles is now telling Stacey that he really would like to buy her car. Like, what does he need to do to make this whole prank up to her? And then she's like, could you help someone who needs a workout partner to get back to a size 4? Like, and then he clearly thinks, that she's talking about herself. And I thought this was a little interesting because he's like, well, what would I need to do? And she's like, well, you just need to, hold her legs while she does sit-ups, spot her while she does squats, dab the sweat off her cleavage. And he is actually intrigued by this, even though he pretends to be disgusted by her. And he agrees to it. But then she pulls Sylvia out from like the other room and is like, here she is. So now he's got to do all that, but for Sylvia. And so he's like, do you think you can get me into these? And it's like almost like some sort of like workout song. And then meanwhile, we cut to back outside the mansion. Fran is sitting outside, like desperately waiting for Maggie to get home because she wants to talk to her about this whole sex and like this whole Michael situation. And then there's this really funny scene where Maggie gets home and Fran like ushers her in, and Maggie starts off by being like, Fran, I really need to talk to you. But Fran is like so singularly focused on like her making things okay with her father that she's like, okay, honey, we'll talk about it after. But first, you need to just go talk to your father and apologize. But while you're doing it, you really should make sure you look like the little girl he wants you to be. So while she's talking to her, she literally starts grabbing her hair, putting it in pigtails. She grabs out a giant lollipop pop and is like, and when you're done, you should probably skip out while holding this. And then she like grabs this tiny little coat that probably Gracie wore in like season 1 and like wants Maggie to like cram herself into it. So just this idea that like, she is trying to, strategically be like, if Maggie goes in and looks like the adorable little girl she used to be and apologizes, like that's the best way to just smooth everything over and I won't be in trouble anymore. But then while she's doing this, Maggie finally like gets out what she's been trying to tell her. And she's like, Fran, I think I'm pregnant. Fran literally passes out face down, which is the funniest way to pass out. Like the camera pans out and she is on the floor like just
it's really, really good.
Face planted. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then we cut back, probably like clearly commercial break. We cut back and Fran is like coming to off the floor and she's like woozy. And then she stands up and she's like, Maggie, like, didn't you use protection? And Maggie's like, of course. And she's like, well, you obviously didn't buy quality. That's the one thing you buy retail.
It's a great line.
Yeah, condoms is the one thing you buy retail.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically drags her out and is like, we need to get you a pregnancy test. But like nobody can know about this. But then they realize that Yetta has been there the whole time. And then Fran's like, Yetta, you need to promise me you'll forget everything you just heard. And then Yetta clearly like looks completely confused. Like she can't even finish a sentence. And then Fran just goes, I think we're safe. And then like grabs Maggie and pulls her out. Like, ooh, Yetta's dementia, like for the win. And then that next scene,
Yetta's dementia for the win.
But like, then we have that like very goofy, funny scene where like basically like secret agent man plays. Fran comes into the apartment. It's not the apartment, the mansion. She's wearing like a black trench coat, a black fedora, and sunglasses. She has gotten the pregnancy test, and she's trying to like slip it to Maggie. And there's this kind of like very just like fun choreographed like scene where it's like she tries to slip it to Maggie, but Mr. Sheffield walks in, so Maggie drops it behind her back, kicks it back to Fran grabs it, runs up the stairs, like drops it down from the balcony. Then there's Niles, like Maggie kind of like pivots and dances away, and it was just like, I'm like, oh, this was just a very creative silly way to like have this gag happen, right? Because it could have easily been like just like, take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. And then like, they run up the stairs, but it was fun. I was, again, like creative and like, they also seem to just, again, like have a little more creative license by season 6,
Yeah, it was great. They did like, they played like spy parody music to it also, which I thought was super fun. It was like, it sounded like 007 or whatever you want. Whatever.
Whatever. Just stop it.
Leave me alone. Just leave me alone. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Then we cut to Fran and Maggie in the upstairs bathroom.
We do.
And there was,
We do.
Oh.
In this bed. I like this scene.
We got to Fran and Maggie in the upstairs bathroom, and it's a super sweet scene because it was very authentic, and it really was like, I think, important to add this, right, for the emotional stakes. Maggie like tells Fran that she's like really scared. She's, because they have the test, but she hasn't taken it yet. And Fran gives her a big hug, and she's like, whatever happens, you will not go through this alone. Like, I'm here for you. And then this little like scene that's happening at the same time killed me, because outside the bathroom door, because like Cece had knocked on the door and they were like, we're in here. So then we just see Cece outside with Niles, and they're still arguing about the car. And it turns out she clearly has sold it to him, but Niles is super unhappy, and he's like, I want my money back. It's a piece of junk and it smells like an animal died in the trunk. And Cece goes, oh no, he's at the vet. It's an actual moment where she thought she had left Chester in the trunk. Her relationship with that dog, one of the highlights of this show to me.
Yeah, agreed.
And then this part really just, it kind of infuriated me, because so then Cece and Niles kind of wander away, but then Maxwell knocks on the door, and Fran's like, I'm in here. And then he's like, ooh, well, like, why don't you let me in? Because I kind of wanted to finish what we started earlier, because they had kind of been really flirty. And I was like, dude, ladies in the bathroom, like, she could be going number 2. Like, just leave someone alone when they say they're in the bathroom. Don't try to walk in, right? Like,
seriously.
And then she's literally like, no, like, we're us. And then he hears Maggie is also in there. And then he gets like, I think, unrealistically and bizarrely suspicious right away. And then he's like, what are you doing in there? What's going on? Let me in. And I just wrote, crazy. Like, absolute. Like, if this is how Mr. Sheffield
unhinged behavior.
It was just like, they said they needed some privacy. they could be doing a million things that require privacy. Like, you don't just storm in on people in the bathroom. If this was like his normal like personality, I'd be like justice for Fran, because she's married to an incredible, like an emotionally abusive nut. But what I really think is happening, and this is always a pet peeve of mine in sitcoms, where people don't make realistic choices to their character in order to serve the plot line. Because normally Mr. Sheffield would have tapped on a bathroom door, and if someone had said like, "Oh, I'm in here," he probably would have been instantly humiliated and run off. Like, you know?
Yeah.
He would have been like, "Oh, yes, oh, I'm so sorry."
Oh, Gia. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. He probably would have.
But I mean, hey, but maybe he feels very entitled to his children's space, which is also very realistic to parents. Like, I think there's a rough transition with a lot of parents where it's like they are used to literally having complete ownership of their children's space, and their children don't have privacy, because there's a long period of time when you're raising children where it's literally, they are like, "Hey, can you come in and wipe my butt for me?" Right?
Yes.
Or
yes,
like the children
absolutely.
are watching you pee or all this stuff. And then suddenly your children get to that stage of development where like they want their space and they want privacy. And I think the idea for some parents that like they just can't walk in on their children whenever they see fit is like a bit of a mind F. So maybe he still just is thinking, this is my little 11-year-old, and when I think something weird is happening in the bathroom, like, I'm gonna bust in, you know?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But so he sees the pregnancy test. Yep. He definitely, we don't actually see him lose it. Maggie walks out of the bathroom, they slam the door behind, and we just hear like vicious screaming, but like it's sort of like you can't even make it out. It's like, and then she's like, and then Fran just comes out with like a serene smile, and she's like, "Okay, honey, your father wants us to make you a gynecologist appointment."
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
And then we get a great scene with one of my favorite character actresses.
Yes, who's been in this show before.
Yep.
Although, you know what? Her name is suddenly escaping me. You know her name.
Nora Dunn.
Nora Dunn, okay.
The great Nora Dunn. Yep.
Yes. Who was an SNL alum, an incredible character actress. And she's one of those actresses where other comedians like speak incredibly highly of her. Like they like if you listen to the SNL castmates who like were there with her at the same time, and these are, you know, to be frank, these are a lot of people who are usually kind of sexist towards female comedians. Like, this is like the Dana Carvey, like David Spade years, and they'll just be like, "Oh my God," they'll be like, she was like just the funniest person I've ever met.
Ever.
In my life,
yeah,
you know?
ever.
So
yeah, and she remains great. She pops up and stuff even to this day, and like she remains great. Yeah, yeah,
and so she plays this gynecologist, and I was like loving what they did with this character, because I guess they do this all the time, where for some reason they make the most hilarious doctors. Like, I don't think there's been a single doctor on this show that hasn't been like a laugh out loud character that is only been there for like a few scenes in an episode, but is like always the highlight, because they get this gynecologist office. It is like so specifically decorated. It's almost like it's like the like most stereotypical version of like what a she shed would be. Like it's like frilly pink candles, like roses. Like they made this like this stereotypically like womanly oasis. And I was like, man, I actually would love it if the gynecologist looked like this. It is so soothing and cozy. And she literally, like, there's this tray of cookies shaped like my doll, and the doctor is like, it's Dr. Reynolds. She's like, oh, I bake when I'm stressed. And then there's like these beautiful silk robes to get into. And she's like, oh, I paint silk on the weekends. And like, she's just like this like crafty, like quirky lady. And so she basically is like, don't you worry, Maggie. Like, we'll do all the necessary tests. Like, you go get into this robe. So Maggie steps out and Fran sits down with Dr. Reynolds. And then she sees this photo, this line. Oh my God. She sees this photo and she's like,
this is great.
She's like, Dr. Reynolds, is that you with Hillary? Like meaning Hillary Clinton. And Dr. Reynolds is like, oh yes, she comes in once a week. And Fran's like, isn't that like a bit much? And she goes, wouldn't you if you were married to him? And I was like, oh my God, Hillary has to go in once a week for STD testing? That is sad. That's like, I mean, the idea that this woman has to go get tested constantly because he's married to Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Like, what a weirdly dark joke.
It's so dark. So it's such a dark joke.
And then Maggie comes back in, and I guess she's like taking the initial test, but it takes about 20 minutes for the results to come back. So while she's there, Dr. Reynolds is like questioning, it's just like asking Maggie about any potential symptoms. So she's kind of like, have you felt fatigue? Have you felt any cravings? And what's becoming clear is that while Maggie has not been experiencing any pregnancy symptoms, Fran has. Because Fran keeps being like, yeah, Fran's like, well, I know I've been so tired since I got back from the island. And yeah, it's so funny, Maggie, even though you haven't been craving things, like I've had this and this. And it's just kind of like becoming more and more clear that someone else might be pregnant here, right? And the test comes back and the like doctor's like, Maggie, like you're officially not pregnant. And then I thought there was very realistic moment where Fran like kind of grabs her into a hug and it's like, honey, remember how this moment felt. Like, because, she's like, you're so lucky. But just like, please think about this moment the next time you have sex. Basically, like be incredibly careful. And then the
which fair.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is like probably the best way to do it. Like the thing is, Fran did not shame her at all. She was an excellent mother throughout this whole thing. Right.
Yeah.
She was very understanding. It was very like, I'm here for you no matter what happens. But again, like, here's the reality of this. Like, these are the real life consequences of what happens sometimes. So just like, remember how scared you were and then how relieved you felt. I was also kind of like, I guess, well, actually I'll make this point later. But okay. So then Maggie runs out to call Michael and tell him, but then the doctor is like, Fran, can you sit down a moment? I kind of want to talk to you about something. And it becomes clear that now Fran understands that it's the doctor suspecting that she might be pregnant, right? And we then kind of put a little button on that. We go back to the mansion and put a button on that like BMW Niles and Cece thing where basically Niles has paid someone to claim they want the BMW that's parked outside and that, tell Cece he'll pay double. So that incentivizes Cece to buy back this pile of junk from Niles, and all is well. He has outsmarted her as usual. But then, okay, so that's just like the little setup to ground us back in the mansion because Fran comes running in. She's super excited. She's like, where's Max? Where's Max? I need to talk to Max. I need to talk to him right away. And so then Maxwell comes in and he's like, hello, darling. He's like, and she's like, I have wonderful news. And he's like, oh, I know. Like, Maggie phoned me from the doctor's office. It is great news. And she's like, no, it's something else. It's something else. She's like, you need to sit down. And he gets super, she's like, literally wants to just like blurt out, I'm pregnant. She's so happy. she's so excited and exuberant. But then before she can, he's like, oh, I'm so relieved, about this Maggie situation. Cause the last thing we need is a baby in this house. And he's like, cause she's like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I would obviously want Margaret to finish college. So that would mean we'd be raising a baby right now. And in my head, I just wrote, I guess abortion just didn't exist on network television because until this moment, like I didn't fully realize that like when Fran kept saying things like whatever happens, like I'll be by your side. I thought that meant like whether she's pregnant, whether she has a baby, whether she has an abortion, but that is like, they make it very clear, like that was never on the table.
That was not an option. She was gonna have this baby or not.
Which
is also probably why they were like, she's definitely 21.
Yeah. But so then, so Mr. Sheffield's like, well, because we'd be having to raise a baby, and that just would be awful. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And he's like,
oh, there's nothing I want. Like he like really like layers it on.
Yes. Where he's like, we just got married. I want you all to myself. Yeah.
He's like, if I had a baby right now, it would literally kill me.
It would just literally like if you came in super excited to share news and this is what you were hearing, it would completely
deflates her. Yeah, it's sad.
And then he's like, well, anyway, darling, like, what was it you wanted to tell me? And she kind of takes a beat, and
which is a classic sitcom moment too. Like shitting all over the thing and then being like, oh, wait, so what was that thing you had to say? That never happens in real life. That's another one of those things that like, has that ever happened to you where like you came in to tell someone something and then they told you like the exact opposite of what you were going to say. And then you were like, nothing.
Oh, wait. Oh my God, though. I wanted to just a brief aside for everyone. Yeah. So do you remember, you've said this like maybe like several seasons ago now, where there was sort of like everybody out, you.
Yeah.
And you were like, you said that same thing where you're like, when does that ever happen in real life? Where like someone walks in, there's a group of people in the room and you're like the person's mad at one person, is like everybody out. And that one person tries to slink out and then you gotta go, not you. And we were like, that never happens. Well, I think I already told you this when I was watching Oppenheimer in theaters, which is a very serious movie.
Yes, totally.
That happens in a scene where Josh Hartnett is like incensed and he runs into this room with all these like, academics and he's like, everybody out. And then Oppenheimer tries to slink out like the father of the atomic bomb. And he's like, not you. And I literally like almost burst out laughing. Well, in this very quiet
I guess that disproves my theory because Oppenheimer is based on a true story, so clearly that really happened in real life.
Yes. But it was very funny to me to see that in a non-sitcom situation. But anyway, you're right. So now.
So she's heartbroken. Fran is like crushed. Well, and we get. Yeah,
I was gonna say this is it was a very great acting moment from Fran Drescher. Like her eyes, she doesn't cry, but you can tell she's upset and.
Yeah, and you can see the light drain from her eyes. Like she does a really good job of being like full of like light and joy. And then he tells her that and she's trying not to show it, but you can see like internally, like everything deflates inside of her. It's really well acted.
Yes. And then he's like, well, what was it? And she's like, there's a shoe sale at Bloomingdale's. Yeah. And then he kind of like laughs and gives her a hug. Like, oh, you're so adorable. Like that, that's what you wanted to tell me. And she just has this look of like, what am I going to do on her face?
Because she's also not allowed to have an abortion.
Well, she doesn't want one. That's the point.
Right.
Okay. She wants her husband to be excited to have a baby with her. And then we cut to the button, and this button was just so cute. It wasn't even cute. Yeah, it was like not even really like supposed to be like hilarious. It was just sweet. So Gracie and Yetta, they're in the kitchen having a snack, and Gracie's like, oh, Yetta, everyone treats me like I'm a baby. They don't tell me anything. Because it's clear that like she knew something was probably going on in the house this week, but like wasn't really let in on it. And then Yetta's like, well, at my age, people tell you things and then you forget. And then Gracie being the wise little girl that she is, she's like, I'm sorry, that must be really hard. And then Yetta's like, sometimes, but sometimes it's a blessing. I get bad news and 10 minutes later I'm on top of the world. and then, you know, Gracie says like, you know, thank you for giving me something to look forward to, Yetta. And then, which was sweet. And then Yetta's like, I wish you were my great granddaughter. And Gracie's like, I am. And then then Yetta's thrilled again.
Yeah.
because she had forgotten and then she got good news. And it's like, it was just, and then they kind of like hug. And it was just sweet.
It's
very
so
unnecessary, but sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. It was a good little button. I mean, it was smart of them to end on an uplifting note because the to be continued moment right before is just like kind of a downer and kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So,
I guess I forgot to even say that. Yes, it ended on to be continued, right?
Yeah. Fran is heartbroken. He's like, "What did you have to tell me?" And she's like, "Yeah, there's a sale." And then it just says very ominously "to be continued," and you're like, "Oh no, that's sad."
Mm-hmm.
We did not. Someone on Twitter said, "Hey, this is a 2-parter, so you guys might want to watch both before you record." I did not see that until well after we had already started recording, so we did not. I didn't watch both. You watched both.
Well, and here's the thing, though.
So I don't know what happens next.
Well, here's the thing. The next episode also ends on to be continued. So we sort of we would have been in a trap regardless.
This is our first 3-parter.
Yeah.
Wow.
What
it's
if
like a movie. This is like a nanny movie.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was going to say, what if every single episode of a sitcom ended with to be continued? Because technically it is.
Well, every episode of every show should end with to be continued.
Oh, that's what I mean.
Or it should be considered the series finale.
Yeah.
Like if I don't see to be continued at the end of something, I turn it off and never watch it again, assuming that it's over, which is why I've only ever seen the pilot episode of most TV shows. I'm like, well, that was a good movie.
Yeah.
Weird that it was only an hour, but okay.
I liked those people. Wish there was more.
All right. Well, listen, it's time to get into segments. Now, as you know, I've been doing a new segments theme every single week. I was trying to thematically match them up to the mood or something in the episode. I had already picked out the segments theme before I watched this episode. And so in this kind of dour, sort of sad ending of an episode, segments. And now, segments.
Are we ready for segments?
We are so ready for segments. Let's go. All right, so segment time. Segments.
Mm-hmm. Should we move on to our segments? Should we get into our segments? With Sean and Toria.
Oh my God. I think that's my favorite one yet. I love that one, Sean. It was just like, there's so much ambiance.
There's so much ambiance. It's
like, I'm also like, I just funny how much music like takes you to like visuals. Cause I'm like, oh my God, this is like, it's like part Breaking Bad to me. It's part, what was that the new zombie show with Pedro Pascal?
Yeah, it's a little Last of Us.
The Last of Us.
Yellowstone.
Yes. Like I was just imagining like us, like in cowboy hats, rugged terrain, like us podcasting out on the by the buffalo.
Us podcasting riding horses.
Yes, but also like some like real dramatic beats thrown in there too, like you know.
Yeah, like you with a wound and me pouring alcohol on it because we don't have modern medicines.
Oh my God! But no, what if it was like us on the horse, like Pedro and the little girl, but we were podcasting.
But it's me behind you with my arm wrapped around
obviously.
I'm like, take us home, Dad.
Yeah, I'm like pushing off, people that are trying to hurt you. Clickers, but then like rolling on the floor and then trying to grab the mic so we can keep podcasting. Okay. Anyway,
I hope people are enjoying these themes, man. Otherwise, what a waste of this final season. If every episode there's people just going like, these themes suck.
I know. Well, I bet
And I hate their riffs.
I know. That's the thing, is they're also then subjected to our conversation about the theme every week. Yeah. But anyway, so fun. I loved it. I want to hear it again.
We're doing it for us. Oh, yeah. Well, you'll hear it. Let's get through these segments. So favorite lines and moments. I don't have many, so I'm going to go first because I didn't really have a ton of one-liners. I did like Nora Dunn saying talking about like having a weekend job and going, I print on silk on the weekends, which I thought was a really funny that's what she does. And then I didn't bring this up in the discussion of the episode. This was not a favorite moment. This was a least favorite moment. Why on earth does Fran infantilize Maggie by putting her in pigtails and giving her a lollipop and telling her to skip in to apologize to her father? What is that? That was the scene that Elizabeth went, ew, what?
Because Fran just wants to not be in trouble anymore.
Yes, but why would the answer be to ask their grown daughter to put on little pigtails and lick a lollipop? And like, why?
Because, well, she explains it. The fastest way to Mr. Sheffield's heart when it comes to his children, especially his daughters, is like, you know, oh, she's just my little baby. I can't be mad at my little baby girl. Which, sadly, I think a lot of fathers
it works.
feel that way. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, like, how could I be mad at my little baby?
It's just messed up, man. It was like, I couldn't imagine like, it's just crazy. Imagine Elizabeth and her dad got in a fight and I was like, all right, baby, here's what I think you should do. Put your hair in some pigtails.
So
put on a schoolgirl outfit and just go over and be like, Daddy, I'm so sorry.
The thing is, I have many friends who are like female friends
who only wear pigtails around their father.
But like you'll joke how it's like you're like, it doesn't matter how old you get, like your daddy just wants you to be a little girl. Like,
yeah, I mean, look, it's true of mothers and sons. I mean, to this day, dancing with my mom at my wedding, she leaned into me and she went, oh, you're not a little boy anymore, I guess. And I was like, Mom, I'm 42. I haven't been a little boy since like the mid 80s. What?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that seem absurd probably until you actually experience the pleasure but heartbreak of watching your kids grow up and not be yours anymore. Like there's a lot of like really interesting essays or poems or quotes on like the experience of at least with motherhood. I don't know about fatherhood, but I read it in the context of motherhood, where it's like, when you have a baby, it's like suddenly the whole purpose of your life is, you know, feeling connected to this thing, and this thing needs you, and this little life is completely dependent on you. And then you're supposed to, like, you're doing a good job if this thing that you literally like would die for and is the center of your gravity starts to move further and further away from you. Like that you've done a good job if this thing starts to become independent, stops needing you, stops wanting you around all the time. And for a lot of people, it's very hard, you know, to be like, oh yeah, like I would spend every day hanging out with my kid because they're like the center of my life. And the reality is, they're healthy if they don't want me around that much, you know, like,
yeah,
or don't need me. Right. That means I've done a good job. And I'm sure there's people where they're like, finally, my kid's out of the house. But I think, you know, there's people who experience the opposite, which is sort of like a lot of nostalgia, a lot of just, you know, wishing their kids lived with them forever.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess you don't know till you become a parent, huh?
Yeah, you sound like you're gonna fucking hate your kids.
Yeah, I'm gonna despise them. So what were your lines and moments? Did you have like specific ones?
Oh yeah, so I loved when Fran asked why men who marry the fine women die young, and Yetta goes, because they want to. I loved Cece for a second thinking she had left Chester to die in her car. There was this line when Fran's at the gynecologist, and she goes, wow, this is a lot nicer than my gynecologist's office. But then again, how do you give a former car wash glamour? And the doctor who keeps like sort of like unveiling like more and more like things like, you know, amenities at her office, like the cookies and the silk robes. And she goes, oh, and while you wait, I have videos of the Lilith Fair. Instead of, yeah, it's just like very funny. And then I really love that Fran, instead of saying she has nausea, she calls it nauseousness. Oh, yeah. Ever since I got back from the island, I've been experiencing some nauseousness, which is just funny. So, and then, and I just loved Fran being, for the most part, a very supportive mom throughout this.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yiddish, I didn't clock any.
No, there was no time. There was no time for Yiddish.
No time. That's the next James Bond movie.
No time for Yiddish. Da-na, da-na, da-da-na.
And then it's just the blowing of the shofar.
That's the whole movie.
But okay, so for nanny trivia, very short and sweet. This was the first episode where we see the upstairs powder room.
Yes, finally. I've been waiting 6 years to see the upstairs powder room.
So now we've got that terrace set. We've got an upstairs powder room set, which I'm wondering, are they going to use that again?
Many of us in the fandom didn't even believe it existed, but we've been proven wrong.
And then for the Fran or the Cece or the whoever, who did you relate to?
Well, as you pointed out, I'm going to be a terrible father. So, no. So I relate to Mr. Sheffield. Honestly, I sort of related to Fran here in that I also desperately want to have a baby. And that if this were me in this scenario, I think I would have handled it more as Fran did than more as Mr. Sheffield did. And I would have encouraged an abortion. I think she's too young, and they're not married, and they're not even sure, like, they're not even engaged. But it's ultimately would have been Maggie's choice too. So I think had Maggie pushed back and been like, hey, I don't believe in this, or I don't want to do this, or it's important I don't do that, then I would have, as Fran, been like, okay, well then I'm here for you, I guess. And, you know, I guess we're all going to raise a baby together.
Yeah.
What can you do at that point? You know, you can't. Mr. Sheffield's insane. What's he going to cut his daughter out of his life? Like, it's a crazy response he's having.
Yeah. Well, also, it
very
sounds
short-sighted.
It sounds like you might have encouraged her to have the baby so that you could have raised it as your own.
No, I want my own baby. I don't want to raise my daughter's baby. I'm not psychotic.
So you're not my mom?
No. Stop.
My mom used to be like, Tori, if you ever get into trouble, she used to call it that, as even though I was a grown woman. She's like, you know, I would take care of that baby. And I'm like, oh, great. That's great. That would be wonderful.
Cool.
So for me, this was a tough one. I saw myself in a lot of people. I'm sure there would be a very irrational part of me that would be irrationally mad that my child was having sex in my house. I'd be like, why did they have to do it here? Why can't they do it somewhere else? Mm-hmm. They're also, I could see myself being the Fran or the Maggie, just depending on the day. Like, I think sometimes I'm probably like, even to this day, I'm like, dodged a bullet this month. and then other times, like, you know, especially because it's like, I don't know if our listeners know, but like my best friend is having a baby due in January. And,
she doesn't know who the father is.
Might be her husband, Jack, but we're not sure.
We don't know.
No, but so she's having a baby, and you know, there's since this has all started happening, there's a part of me that's like, well, what if, like, ooh, like, wouldn't that be fun? Like, you know, we'd push our strollers
the two of you
together.
could raise your babies together. That would be so cute. That's always the future I envisioned for you and Monica.
I know. So it's like, I definitely, you know, there's a part of me that then, you know, thinks a little further and is like, oh no, that would be bad. Like, I'd be in financial ruin.
No,
but
what if we also do it, and then it's you, me, and Monica, because I'm the stay-at-home dad, and we all just hang out and like raise our kids together. That would be a blast.
We'd have so much fun. But
so much fun, dude.
The problem is I don't have a a breadwinner. So
yeah, you got the pizza man. You got a dough winner, baby. He's got all that dough.
He's that dough daddy. He's the but so my life would fall apart pretty quick.
Yeah, but it would give something Monica and I to talk about.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, okay, I'm sold.
We'd be able to gossip.
Isn't it tragic, Tori's situation?
So sad what's happening.
All they feed the baby is pizza. It's all they can afford. But okay, so that was an episode.
Yes.
Everybody, what are your thoughts? This was a loaded, jam-packed ep. And
it was. We went for a long time, but I felt like a lot happened. And so much so that they made it into the 3-parter. So this is a big story to tell. I'm excited.
Yep. Everybody, you know where to find us. Oh, Mr. Chef Pod on Instagram and also Twitter, now X. You can email us.
Mr. Sheffield Podcast at Gmail.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield Podcast. Also, we've got our merch up. I shared mine on our Instagram so you can see it, but the shirt comes in all different cuts and styles and colors. So just the one that I have on isn't the only one you can choose for sure.
Yeah. In fact, I got a zip-up hoodie, and they give you the option of putting the image on the front or the back. So I put the image on the back. And then I also bought a hat in black with our logo, with our show logo on it. So I'm very excited to get my items in the mail. And yeah, you can check it out. We're going to just donate anything that we do make to the Entertainment Community Fund to help out all of our friends and family on strike. And if you want to do that or just want to check it out, you can go to ohmrchefpod.redbubble.com and check it out there. It's also in the link on our bio on Instagram and Twitter. And I think that's it, Tori. Are you ready to hear this theme one more time?
Yes, I'm
all right.
Begging.
Bye.
Goodbye.
And now, segments. I'm going to light a cigarette.
Are we ready for segments?
We are so ready for segments. Let's go. All right, so segment time. Out on the range. Segments.
Should we move on to our segments?
Yeah!
Should we get into our segments? With Sean and Toria.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.